Hey guys, how's it going? This is Simon, and in this video I'm going to show you how to answer the questions that I gave to you so that you can practice for your UNIX final exam. The final exam is going to have a lot of questions to do with data extraction, which is what these questions are basically. With data extraction, you're basically filtering through a large amount of data and extracting specific information that the test is going to ask from you. And a lot of students struggle with this because when it comes to these types of questions, it's a very logical process to find the answer. You're given several commands that you can use to extract the data, but there isn't a formula where you're going to use the same sequence of commands. Sometimes you're going to use just grep to find the answer. Sometimes you use grep and word count. Sometimes you use cut, grep, and word count. Sometimes you use grep, cut, and then grep and word count. Sometimes it's grep, and word count. Like, there's just so many variations that you can use to extract data that it can be very confusing to teach people how to do this. You really just have to understand what each of the commands do, and then when you're given the question, look at the question and say, what is the data that they want? And look at the actual data sheet and say, well, what am I actually seeing here? How can I get rid of the stuff that I don't want and just keep the stuff that the question is asking me for? So it's very, very difficult, but you just have to practice. And to be honest with you, once you've got this down, and it doesn't really take long, it's kind of a learning curve, but once you get this down, then it feels a lot easier. You become very comfortable with it, and when it comes to the test, like I said, there's a lot of questions to. I would probably say there's probably 30% in terms of questions dedicated just to data extraction, that if you can get this down, if you can feel comfortable with this, then this is an easy 30% of marks for you. So I'll do my best in this video to explain this in a way that makes sense to you, but if you have any questions, let me know. So what I'll do, I'm just going to start off by defining all the tools that you're probably going to use, and by tools I mean commands. So let's get into it. The very first command is grep. And grep is a way to search a file for a specific set of characters, strings, and numbers. You can also use regular expressions, and this makes grep a very powerful tool. In a nutshell, grep is used when you need to find something specific in data. So I'll give you a couple examples. Here's a question where it says, how many games had at least one team score more than 4 to less than 10 runs? So what that means is, how many games did a team score between 5 and 9 points, okay, or 5 to 9 runs? So because there's a very specific condition, we need to find a number between 5 and 9. You know right there, you're searching for something specific, you're going to use grep. Here's another one, and this one's kind of even crazier. What command will give you the last loan payment amount that was between the amount of 900 and 999? So right there, 900 to 999, that's very specific. That's the very specific amount, so you're definitely going to be grepping that. Then there's this, loan payment. So in this data file, we're going to see that there's a lot of things, not just loan payments, but bill payments, transfers, all these other things. So we need to find loan payments specifically, which means we are going to be using grep again. So grep is a very powerful tool when you need to find something very specific. So let me show you how grep works, and I'm also going to show you how you need to be very specific with grep, because you can easily get the wrong information by not doing the right thing. So there's a file called words in this directory of Mohawk, and when I cat it and I see what's in there, there's a bunch of words, there's a bunch of sentences, there's some numbers. I added some things, so if you try to do this on yours, you may not get a lot of this stuff, but what we have in here is a bunch of things. Now if I want to specifically find all of the lines that have the word color in it, then I just have to say grep color and then the file name, which is words. And right there we can see there is one line that had just the word color, and then there's another line that had color is American. So it gave me the whole sentence, it gave me the whole line, but basically it gave me everything with color, which is exactly what I wanted. So that's really good. But where a lot of students actually do fail on the test is not that they're using the wrong command. Sometimes they're using the right command, but here's the problem. Imagine I need to search for the name Frank in a file. I need to see every line where Frank appears. A lot of students would say this, okay, grep Frank. in words. And we get 4 lines, okay? And that sounds like, okay, that's awesome. But actually look at these lines. One says Frank is a man, so that works. But the next line says Frankenstein is not a man. Well, Frankenstein and Frank are 2 different people, okay? Frank is a man and Frankenstein is a monster. So this line doesn't actually have Frank in it. But the reason why it came up is because the letters Frank are in Frankenstein. So if I asked you for the amount of lines that Frank is in, and you did what I just did, which is grep Frank words, and you piped it over to word count, it's going to say 4. And if you tell me that answer, I'm going to say it's wrong. That's not right. So how do we figure out how to get just Frank? Well, there's several things that you can do. One is you can look for patterns. Frank just ends at Frank. There's nothing after except for maybe a space. So I can try that. I can say, well, let's do grep Frank with a space and words. And let's see if that works. And it says Frank is a man, so that one worked. I had a teacher by the name of Frank and he was good. That worked. We don't have the Frankenstein, so that worked. But look at this last line. I had a teacher named Frank. It doesn't have a space after it, has a period. So now I know I can't do that either because that's not going to give me the right thing. So what I can do is I can do grep W for I want just the word Frank to show up, nothing after except for a space, a period, a comma, a quote, basically a special character. If it's a space or a special character, I will allow that. But by saying grep W, that's what that will do. So if I do this, grep W Frank in words, I get exactly what I want. Frank is a man. I had a teacher by the name of Frank and he was good. And I had a teacher named Frank. So it gave me everything with the name Frank. And that was perfect for me, so that if I pipe that over to word count W, or sorry, word count -L, that will give me number 3. And if you give me that answer, I will mark it correct. So that is how grep is very powerful, but it's also easy to mess up if you're not looking for patterns and you're not looking at what is actually being extracted when you use it. So let's clear that. That was grep. The next command is word count, which counts all the lines in the file specified. So I say specifically WC-L. On your test, that's probably the only thing that you need to use is WC-L when you're doing any kind of counting. If you just use word count, I'll show you what that looks like. If I just said word count words, we're going to get a bunch of numbers. We're going to say 25 here, 64 here, 320 there. You might not know what that means, but basically it's 25 lines in the actual file. There's 64 actual words, and there's 320 characters. So that is basically a lot of information that you probably don't need. You can simply just say word count -L in words, and that will give me 25 words, which is exactly what I'm looking for because it's 25 lines. And you're going to say, well, why do I want lines? When it comes to the test, I'm pretty sure that the test file is going to be the MLB file that you have in your practice virtual machine, except it's just going to be a massive file. It's going to be a lot more. In your virtual machine, you only have games from 2010 in September. In the actual test, you'll have it from like 1940 all the way to 2010, and it's every month. It's nuts. So when you're looking for information, it'll ask you basically for the amount of games that this happened, and each line is a game. So you're going to just want to put WC space -L whenever you're looking for the amount of something. So when it comes to WC, it's just counting, and counting is going to be used a lot. As you can see in my first question, it says how many games. The minute you see how many, you know you're going to be counting. So you're going to be using word count somewhere. How many games? Which delay below had the most games? So right there, it had the most games. So you're going to be looking for the number of games. How many total transactions? I mean, anytime it looks like you're counting something, WC space -L is going to be used. The next thing is cut. And cut is a very awesome command because Think of a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. You can have a lot of different fields, right? And imagine that we have a field for a first name, a field for a last name, a field for an age, field for a gender, field for an address, field for a phone number. And you're like, okay, I have all this information, but the only information I need is the phone number. Cut allows you to specify what field you want, and every other field will be removed. So you can see just the field that you want. And you can have multiple fields as well. You can have field 1 and field 3 if you want. So I'm going to show you what that looks like down the road, because we have a lot coming up that will use cut, but it's a very powerful tool. And when you see how it works, it can be really, really awesome. Sort is exactly what it sounds like. It just basically sorts things alphabetically or numerically. I tell you, always use sort-n or sort-nr. N is the common factor. Basically, it just means that it'll sort it numerically from a human readable standpoint, meaning when you count like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When a computer counts, it actually counts like this: 1, 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it puts the 10 beside the 1 because both numbers start with the number 1. And that makes things a lot more confusing than it needs to be. So when it comes down to it, when you're doing sort, always say sort-n. And NR just means reverse. So human readable, but in reverse. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it'll be 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So these two are great whenever you need to sort things, because you're going to get questions like this. What was the last loan payment amount? So when you're going to find all these loan payments, you might have to sort them so you can see what was the last one, right? You're going to see sorting becomes very, very useful. The next command is head. And head lists the amount of lines specified from top to bottom. So imagine a big document like Romeo and Juliet, right? Let me just see. I think it's in here. Yeah, okay. So Romeo and Juliet. Imagine I only want to see the first 6 lines of Romeo and Juliet. All you have to do is say head-6 Romeo and Juliet, and it shows me the first 6 lines. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it starts from the top of the book to the bottom. Tail is the same thing, but the opposite in terms of where it searches. It basically lists the amount of lines specified from the bottom up. So imagine I just want to see the end of the book. I'm just like, let me just see the last maybe 10 lines. So I can say tail-10 Romeo and Juliet, and we can see the last 10 lines. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that is how it works. It's very, very useful, because there are going to be some times where you're going to want to see information that can't pop up on the screen unless you specify head or tail. I'll give you an example. The banking file that you're going to get is going to be massive. And if you have to sort through it, you will find that it won't sort everything on your screen, because the terminal can only go so far before it starts deleting text. If you notice, when I scroll up, there's tons of things here, but this isn't the first thing that happened. There was more above it. You just can't see it. It only has so many lines that it can show you before it starts deleting lines. So if you get a large file that's, let's say, 1,000,000 lines long, and you just want to see the first line, you can say head-1 file name, and it'll just show you the first line. So these become really, really useful, and you'll see that when we go through these questions. The last command is UNIQ, and UNIQ is awesome because it removes duplicate information, but you have to use sort-n or sort-nr first. So like I just said, UNIQ is great because if you need to see information but you want to get rid of all the duplicate information, you can use UNIQ. So I'm going to use words for example. Let me show you what words looks like again before I do anything. At the very bottom I put numbers. 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 1. If I say just show me all the unique numbers, that means basically show me which numbers there are once. So there's 4 ones. I don't want to see 4 ones. I just want to see 1 come up once. 2 come up once, 3 come up once. All of these guys need to be deleted. How you can do that is by using UNIQ. But here's the problem. What UNIQ does is it looks at the number and it only compares the number from the number above it and below it. So if you looks at this line, it's going to say, okay, this one's a 1. Is there a 1 above me? Yes. Okay, then I'm going to delete this guy. If there isn't, is there a 1 below me? If yes, I'm going to delete this guy. If no, then I'll keep him here. So watch this. If I just say unique words, now we can see it got rid of a lot of the 1s, but there's still 2 1s here. And that's not what I want. But if I do this, sort n words, now you can see all the 1s are together. And that's really cool because now what I can do is say sort n words and pipe that over to unique, and look at that. Now I have only 1, 2, 3. Each value is only shown once, and that's exactly what we want. So whenever you're using unique, just remember you have to use sort first. Okay? Alright, so that's how you can look at each of these commands. These are the definitions. Hopefully they helped. I know that we didn't go over cut too much, but we will when we actually do the practice because it makes more sense when we do that. But that's what you need to really understand. If you can understand these, then you're in good shape. The only one that is really complicated is GREP, because GREP is something where you can unfortunately think you're searching for the right thing, but you could get a lot of information that you weren't expecting. So let's go into the questions and actually answer them. Alright, so the very first question said, how many games had at least one team score more than 4 to less than 10 runs? So that's a very confusing question off the top, so I apologize about that, but basically what it's saying is list all the games where at least one team scored between 5 and 9. That's all it's saying. So when you think about that question, take away all the information that you need and think about it. Let's go into the actual data file so we can see what we're dealing with. So let's clear this. Let's go into opt mohawk MLB, because that's where the file is. All of these questions are for the MLB file. And let's just cat the MLB file. So here is all of our data. There's tons of it. It starts with a year, then there's a comma, then it has a team. It shows their city and then the team name, comma. There's a number, which is going to be their score, comma. Another team, again, city and the team name, comma, and then a number, which is going to be their score, these guys. That's what it looks like. So it's not really that complicated. It's just a long file. So there's a lot of information that we need to go through. So let's take a look at this and say, well, what do we need? Well, I already gave you a hint, and I said that the minute that you need something specific, you're probably going to be using GREP. We also said how many games. So you saw it. The minute you see how many, you're thinking, okay, I need to use word count as well. So which one do you use first? Well, I like to think of it as try to think about going backwards. Start with this. It doesn't always work, but in this case, start with the specifics first and then go with how many. Because logically, if I look at word count first in this file, and let's see what that would look like. Look, it's giving me 404 lines. Well, that's every line in the sheet, right? That's every line in this data file. So even if I were to grep, let's just say the number 2 in this file, I'm still getting 404. But that doesn't make much sense because look, this score has a 9 and this score is 11. There's no 2 here. So why am I getting 404? Well, the reality is that when you do a word count, you're just doing a word count on all of it. And then when I grep 2, if it is going to grep anything, it's only going to grep everything with a 2. And look, there's all these 2s here. It's just very confusing. What I would do is look at the specifics and extract that first, and then count how many based on all the specific data that we extracted. So the first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, I need to look at the number. Well, how are we going to determine that number? Unfortunately, we need both these fields, okay? So we can cut all these things out except for the scores, and that might work, right? But we don't have to. There is actually a common factor between these scores that none of these other fields have. And I'll show you what that looks like. Let's grep 2 this time. And even though it's not asking for it, we're not doing this question, I'm going to say grep 2. And then word count, we're still going to get 401. Or sorry, 404. The reason for that is that even though this guy does not have a score of 2, it's counting this 2. So we got to be specific. So look at this score and say, what else is here that is not over here? And the trick is this guy, this comma. This comma does not happen before this date. So the minute I put a comma and I say I'm going to grep 2, now I'm sure that I'm going to always have a 2 in my scores. So that's perfect. Now, you got to be careful because some students I've seen do this. They're like, oh, well, why don't I just make it really good, say 2, 2? Because there are some things, and you're going to see in this banking section, there is something where we're going to have a delimiter before and we're going to have a delimiter after. But why you have to be careful is look at this guy. This one is a score, but this score doesn't have a comma after. And if I did have a comma in my grep after the number, then this guy in particular wouldn't show up because he would only be looking here, not over here. You need to make sure that you are very, very conscious about how you're going to grep. So in this case, if I do this, watch this. Word count -L gives me 53, right? But if I get rid of that comma, now I have 104. So if my question was actually saying, hey, how many times did one of the teams get 2? Well, if you said that, that's going to be wrong because that number is only specifically for the home team, which is the first team. It doesn't count the second team. But this guy does include both teams. So that is really important to understand about grep. Grep is probably the most confusing, but if you can really get down, practice it a lot, you'll understand how it works, and then it does become easier. So let's clear that because that's not the answer we're looking for. We're actually looking for a team that has between 5 and 9. So how we can do that is say grep, and we're still going to put our comma in, but now we're going to use a regular expression. We're going to say 5 to 9 in square brackets, and then the file. And we can word count it, but I always like to check my data first. So I'm just going to check and say, okay, so 11 doesn't work, but 9 does, so that's good. 8 works, 9 works, 9 works, 6 works, 8 works, 5 and 6 works, 7 works, 4 doesn't, but 8 does, okay, 8, 8, 7. You don't have to go through all of it because there's going to be too much, but you can do a quick bird's eye view of how everything looks and be like, all right, everything seems to work, this looks right, and then do your word count. And there we go. We get 219, and the answer is 219. So to take away what you need to from this, just remember that when you see a question, try to answer the specifics first before answering how many there are. It's just a logical order that you need to do, and you'll see that this is going to come up over and over again. Always try to get the specifics down first if you can. So let's clear this and let's move on to the next question. Now, the next question says, how many games based on the answer above included the Toronto Blue Jays, meaning Toronto or their opponent had a score of more than 4 and less than 10 runs. So you have to basically take this answer 219. So right away, when it says based on the answer above, that means you have to put in that command again. So here's the command, but let's just get rid of the word count because the word count is going to be different now. But we are going to pipe it over to something else. So what is it specifically asking for? How many games? Well, how many means word count, but we can't do that one yet. We have to do how many at the end. It says included the Toronto Blue Jays. So this is where we can do another GREP, because we did the GREP here, which gave us our 219 games. But now out of those 219 games, we want to see how many of them had the name Toronto Blue Jays. And be specific. When you GREP, don't just say Toronto. Say Toronto Blue Jays. And you're probably going to say, why? Well, if I do this, you're going to see everything comes up with Toronto Blue Jays, right? And let's do a word count just to see what that looks like. It says there's 18 of them, and that's the answer that you get, 18. All right? Now, I'm even going to give you the fact that if I get rid of Blue Jays, you're probably going to still get that same number, 18. But watch this. What if I wanted to have the New York Yankees? Not Toronto, New York Yankees, and I just said New York. And I do word count. I get 31. But watch this. Yankees. I only got 16. How did that happen? Well, if you're not a baseball fan, when I do New York and I get rid of the word count, look at this. New York Mets. Here's New York Yankees. That works. But then New York Mets. Yankees works, but Mets. I mean, the problem is sometimes you have to be specific. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. They're like, oh, I'm just going to say New York. And then they realize they got the wrong answer. And they're like, yeah, but I checked for New York. Always make sure you are as specific as you can be. Never do anything that can potentially be interpreted a different way. If you really want to go crazy, I would even do this. I'd do comma, New York Yankees, comma. That way you know for sure that you're getting a team by the name of New York Yankees and you still get 16. But again, that's just showing you how GREP can be very finicky. So let's clear this. Let's go back to our original answer. So Toronto Blue Jays word count was 18, and that's exactly what we got, which is great. But here's a bonus. How many games did Toronto Blue Jays have a score of more than 4 and less than 10 runs? Not their opponent. It has to be Toronto only. So in this case, with the 18, I didn't care who got the score above or around 5 to 9. So if I do this, you'll see New York Yankees got 7, Toronto Blue Jays got 3. So it wasn't the Blue Jays that actually got that number between 5 and 9. New York Yankees are the ones that did it, and that's fine. That's why we got 18. But we want only the Jays to get that number. So how do we do that? Well, it seems like it's more complicated, right? Because you're like, well, now I have to figure it out. Now I have to count all these. There's an easy way to do it. I'll show you how to do it. It actually is easier than both of these combined. Watch this. We're going to clear this, and we're going to say GREP Toronto Blue Jays, because that's very specific. Remember, they want only Toronto Blue Jays, but they want the Toronto Blue Jays score. So what I can do is say, well, if I'm looking for just their score, I know in the data, if I go back to the data really quickly, every time we see their score, in Minnesota it has comma their score, Kansas City comma their score, Tampa Bay Devils or Devil Rays, sorry, comma the score. So if I want Toronto score, then what I can do is this. GREP Toronto Blue Jays, comma, And then we need that score to be between 5 and 9. So we're going to say bracket 5 to 9. End it with your quotes, put the file in, enter, and look at that. New York Yankees had 7, so that works, but Blue Jays had 5, so that actually does work. Blue Jays had 7, Blue Jays had 7, Blue Jays had 8, 8, 5, 5, 6, 5, 5, 7, 8. It gives us every single time that they were between 5 and 9. So all I have to do is a quick pipe over to word count -L, and we get the answer 12, which is exactly the answer. Pretty cool, right? All right. So now let's do this. It says, which state below had the most games with a score of more than 4 and less than 10 runs? All right. This is one of those questions that's going to require us to do several things. It seems really hard, but it's actually not that hard. When we look at this information, we can see the dates, right? And in this case, there's actually a specific date that's given for each of these things, and they want to know which of these dates is going to have the most games where there's at least one team that scored 4 and less than 10 runs. So, sorry, between 5 and 9, right? Okay, so let's do this. Let's go back to GREP, the original thing that we did, which is comma 5 to 9. This sequence right here is giving us every game that has a team that has a score between 5 and 9. So that's the first thing that we want, right? But we have to know which of these three have the most. So what we can do now is, like I said, these are very specific, which means if it's specific, you have to grep. And we're going to grep the date. So let's grep the date. 2010, 09, and in this case, 01. And what I like to do is put that delimiter in there. Put that comma in there. Just to make sure, even though we know nothing else is going to end up having a date in there, at least you know you're safe this way. So now we can grep this. Enter, just to make sure that we're getting all the dates right. And it looks like they're all just from the first, and that's great. And let's do a word count. There's 7. Okay, so there's 7 in here, which is good. Let's write that down. I already have 7 here, so I'm just going to keep it on my screen. But let's change the date now to the 15th. There's 11, so that's bigger than the first. Now we just have to try the 30th. 6. So there's our answer. The 15th had 11 games where one team had at least 5 to 9 runs. So that's why this ends up being the answer. Alright, so this last one can be technically tricky. I'm going to show you the easy way to do it, and then I'm going to show you the hard way of doing it. But the hard way, the cool thing about the hard way is that the hard way really shows you that you're completely confident in what you're saying. In terms of this specific file, the easy way can work, but I'm going to show you why the easy way may not work for every single file, and you have to be really, really careful. So this question says, how many teams are there in total in this file? So right now the specifics are we're looking for teams, and we want the total amount of teams. So we're only looking for one thing really, and that's the team names. So if I cat the file again, let's put that back in. Alright, sorry about that. Let's go back into the file, and we have all these teams. This is a good time that we can cut. See, we don't care about this date. We don't care about the scores. We only care about the teams. And if you know anything about baseball, baseball has a home team and a visiting team. And in terms of baseball, every team will be a home team and every team will be a visiting team at some point. Okay? So it's fair to say that we actually only need one field to see how many teams there are, because every team will be a home team, every team will eventually be a visiting team. So one of these fields is all we need. So I'm going to pick the second field because that's all we need. This is where we can use the cut command. So let's do it. So cut looks like this. You're going to say cut -d, which is your delimiter. And the delimiter is the character that spaces each field apart from each other. So this is a date, and then we have a comma here, and then we have a team, and then we have a comma. So the commas are the delimiter. So in this case, I'm going to put down a comma. They could be anything. It could be the % sign, it could be a period, it could be a quote, it could be anything. You gotta just be careful. You have to look at what character is spacing them all out. So after you figure out the delimiter, now you're going to say -f for field, and it's the field that you want to keep, and everything else will be removed. So in this case, I only want the second field, and I want everything else removed, so I'm going to say 2. And then put in the name of the actual file. So if I say cut -d, which is delimiter, comma, -f, which is field, 2, and put in the name of the file, look what I'll get. I just get the name of the actual teams, which is great. So that's cool, but how do I figure out how many there are? Because look, there's going to be tons, like right here, St. Louis Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals. There's going to be a ton of duplicates, right? What can we use? Well, if you look here, we can use UNIQ. But what do we have to use with UNIQ to make this actually work? We have to use sort. So if we're going to use UNIQ, we have to use sort. So let's do it again. Let's push up. We're going to cut everything, pipe that over to sort-n, because you have to. Pipe that over to UNIQ, and let's hit enter. Now if you look, you can see we never get a duplicate. You might have thought, oh, well, there's Chicago and Chicago, but it's Cubs and White Sox. We can see New York Mets, New York Yankees. We don't get anything that ends up being a duplicate, which is great. So now all we have to do is word count that, and look, we get 30, and that's the answer. Okay, I'm going to make things really complicated right now. Imagine that for some reason, when I go into this file, imagine there is the potential that one of these teams is always a visiting team and never ends up being a home team. How can I get the answer that should be how many teams there are? Because obviously when we check the home team, we got 30. But if there is a specific team out there that could potentially be always a visiting team and not a home team, then there's one team or however many teams more than 30, right? So maybe it should actually be 31 or 32. How do we know for sure? How can we do this? This is where it gets really complicated. I can show you this. Again, I don't think you'll have to do this on your test, but I'm going to show you this because this can be very useful for you down the road. What we did was we cut the second field and we only checked the second field. So what I would do is instead of cutting that field and looking at it on the screen, what I will do is I'm actually going to put it in its own file. I'm going to redirect it into, let's put it on the desktop, file.txt. Okay? You're going to be like, why did you do that? Well, hang on. Let's do the same thing. And now let's change this to field 4. So now I've put all the home teams in a file called file.txt, and this command is going to take all the visiting teams and it's going to put it into the same file. And we're using the append, by the way. We're redirecting it with append, so it's just going to add on to the file in the list that's already there. So if I hit enter, let's look at that file. Cat desktop file. Now you can see it put the home team and the visiting team all in one file. Look at that. all of these things. Now, it doesn't even let me go past this. This is what I was telling you. Sometimes you're going to get information and it won't let you go past this. So how many teams are there in this file? Let's just count. Word count L desktop file 808. So we know we did it right because the original file, there was 404 games. So that means 2 teams per game should be 808. So that's great. So once you have that in the file, then all you have to do is say sort n that file, and then UNIQ to get rid of all duplicates, and then word count. And in this case, we still got 30. So there's still only 30, which is the right thing. But this is what you can do. Don't be afraid to extract data, put it in a file, and then extract more data from a different column and put in the same file. Sometimes you're going to need to do that. Now, hopefully you won't have to do that on your actual exam, but this is something that I think is actually really, really useful whenever you need to do something. Compare 2 columns that seem to be the same. It's easier to do this than it is to actually look at it on the screen. So hopefully that helps. If you're confused about that, let me know and I'll try to help you further, but that is how complicated things can get. But for the most part, in terms of your test, you're going to see more stuff like the first 3 questions than you are the 4th question. Okay? Let's move on to the banking questions. The banking questions are a little bit more complicated because the file looks way more complicated. So let's clear, let's back out and go into bank, and CT bank. Alright, let's look at what we're dealing with. Let's say cat bank, and we have so much. I mean, look at this thing. It's still going, and it's going, and it's going to go all the way down to 30 or 31. Oh, just 28. That's fine. Good enough. But it is so large. Like, if I scroll up, see how, like, I can't even see my previous stuff? Like, you're never going to get a full screen with all the information that you need. You're going to have things cut off. So this is where you're probably going to end up using things like head and tail. The other thing, too, is look at all these numbers. I mean, if you search for a number, then the number is going to show up probably in this field and in this field and in this field. Like, it just looks so much more complicated than what you're used to. So, alright, what can we do to really figure out this whole file? Well, always read that README. The README is going to give you some really important stuff. Like, for example, there's a code. It's a 2-digit code right here in the 3rd field. And that code is going to determine things like if it's a fund transfer or a deposit or a withdrawal or a bill payment or a loan payment or an interest payment. All right? The first field is your date. Your second field is your time. That 3rd field, like I said, is going to be what kind of transaction it was. The 4th field is going to end up being the customer number. The 5th field is going to be the from account, so where the payment is coming from. The 6th field is where the payment is going to, so which to account. And then the 7th field, the last field, is the actual amount of the transaction. Alright, so you gotta know this stuff. Now, for me, I wrote these down because I'm gonna need these 2 specifically down the road, but you're gonna have to refer to this file to understand how to do this later. So let's just clear this. And let's tackle the first question. It says, how many total transactions occurred December 15th? So, right there, we can see how many. So we know we're probably going to use word count. And there's something very specific. It says December 15th. So, and it says total transactions, so it means everything. So everything on the 15th. So this one's pretty simple. All you're going to do is grep. And we need to know the date. So let's look at the date. Let's look at that file again, just to make sure we're writing down the date properly. We can stop this. So the date is going to look like the year / the month / the day, and then if you're smart, you'll put in the delimiter, which is the % sign. So let's do that. We're going to say grep 2015 / 12 / and it wants the 15th. And put in that % percent sign just in case. The bank, let's hit OK, and we can see every year as far as we can see. We're going to scroll up. It looks like it's all the 15th, so we're happy. All we have to do is do a word count, and that's how we get our answer, 3,858, and that's what I have. So that one's very similar to what was done up here. Pretty simple. Let's clear it again, and now let's look at this guy. It says, what is the largest amount recorded in the entire file? So if you remember, the amount was the 7th field. It's the last field. So when we need to know that amount, we have to think about, do we need anything else, or is that all we need? Is the only thing that we need the amount? Okay, well, if that's the only thing that we need, let's just cut that. Now you're going to say, well, why do I have to cut that? Well, remember, we need the largest amount. So if we're going to need the largest amount, we're most likely also going to have to sort the amount from smallest to largest, right? And if I say sort n, this file, I'm just going to stop it just to show you. 254 is bigger than 79, right? So that's good. But 79 is not bigger than 1,224. And 1,224 is not smaller than, let me see if there's any other ones. Doesn't matter. Point being is, all these numbers, the last field is basically what we're looking for, but they're not being sorted properly because it's sorting these numbers first. This is what it's sorting. So if we want to just sort these guys, then what we have to do first is cut the amount. So all we see is this amount. Everything else needs to be removed. So that's why you would use cut in this case. You're going to say cut delimiter, and our delimiter in this case is the percent sign. And then we're going to say field, and we want the 7th field, bank. And let's enter. There we go. That looks so much better. Now we can sort this guy, and it'll probably make a lot more sense. But watch this. Let's say I just say sort without the n. We get 999.99. But look at my answer. My answer is definitely not that. Why is that? Well, remember, it sorts it by the computer's numerical order. We want human readable. So we're going to say -n, hit enter, and now you're going to be like, oh, this is so much bigger. There we go. The last amount was 1853.51. That's exactly what the answer is. So be careful with the sort. When you need to know just the amount and nothing else matters, cut everything and just get that amount and then sort it so that you can see it, and then you get that number. Now you can also do this. This is another thing. If you're like, I don't want to see all these numbers and stuff like that, it takes too much time, you can do this. You can say sort and then just say tail, oh, I said trail, tail -1. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you so it looks better. You can put a tail at the end so you just get the last answer, and there you go, you'll get the last answer. So that's how you figure out that answer. So it's not too bad. The next one is a little bit tougher because look at the question. It says how many bill payments were made on December 10th. So right there we have something very specific, but we also have bill payments. That is very specific as well. So right away we know there's going to probably be 2 GREPs, and then it says how many. So now we know we're going to probably use a word count as well. So let's look at this. Let's do a GREP, and it's up to you which one you do. You can do December 10th or you can do bill payments. What I like to do is I like to think which one will probably have less transactions. Are there going to be less bill payments, or are there going to be less December 10th transactions? And sometimes it's not clear. For me, I assume there's probably a ton of bill payments all throughout December, so I'm just going to try grepping December 10th first, and then I'll do the bill payments. So what I'm going to do is grep 2015 / 12 / 10, and I'll put in that little delimiter, which is the %, bank. Okay, enter, make sure that we're good. Yeah, we're only getting the 10th, so that's good. Now let's grep, and we want bill payments. Now remember, when it comes to these bill payments, they're going to be here in this third field. I don't want to cut that because I still need the date. So we need the date and we need this. And we could cut everything else except for both of these, but I don't really need to. All I need to do is just make sure I'm getting the bill payments, which is a code 1A. Okay, so I need all of these guys. I don't want any of these guys. Okay, but here's the thing, look at this 1A. If you look at that, that could be in any of these things. There could be, now A specifically, you're going to say, well, A isn't in here, but there's an A here. Maybe it's not a 1A, but you don't want to take the risk. So what I would say is, when it comes to this one in particular, you want to make sure there's a delimiter in front and behind 1A, so that you can make sure that you're getting the right line all the time. That's just the way that I think. You can do just a delimiter in front and that's it, but I just like to make it as future-proof as possible, so I'm going to have a %, 1A%, and I'm going to say grep, and when I look at this, look at all of these 1As, and I scroll up, they're all there, so it's perfect. And now I just have to word count it. 798, let's see if that's right, 798, so that is perfect. So that is how we do that. That is how you get the answer, and I hope that made sense. Basically, if you can tell, you just have to say, okay, whenever I'm looking for something specific, I'm going to grep. Whenever I see how many, or I have to see how much of something, that's the answer, you know you're going to use a word count. If there's something where you are only looking for one particular field, so you're looking for the amount of one thing, then cut the rest. If cutting the rest is going to be complicated for you, like in this one, we didn't need to cut anything to see this, then don't cut it. Like, just basically cut when you need to. When you see something specific, grep. When you see how many or how much, you're going to use word count. If you need to only see a certain amount of lines, use header tail. If you need no duplicates of something, then basically use UNIQ. So you're going to see that you use your practice file. I know that you have the practice quiz. Go through it, try to answer them, try to see what they're like, but you'll see the more you do this, the more you're like, I get this. I finally understand how this works. Try to give yourself questions. It won't be that bad. This is the last question, and this one is kind of a doozy. It says, what command will give you the last loan payment amount that was between the amount of $900 and $999? Okay, so I said that I'm not going to give you the command, but here's the amount it'll end up being, $999.99. And then there's a bonus, which is what is the 13th last amount between 900 and 999 of the same question, which ends up being $999.05. Well, let's take a look. Is there anything specific we need? Yeah. Here's one thing that's very specific. Here's the amount that we need. Here's another thing that's very specific. It's the loan payment. Okay? And the other thing that's very specific is the amount. And we also need to know what is the last loan payment. So now we know that we're looking for basically the last number between all of this. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot to look at. What I would do is I would first cut it by loan payment, because that's the one we're looking for more than anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say grep, and it's 2C bank. Now I know it's 2C because I looked at that readme file and I put it right here. So now if you see, I have everything with a 2C. So that is awesome. Now I need only the amount. Okay, so let's cut that amount. Let's just see I just want that last field. So we're going to say cut delimiter percent, because that's delimiter, field 7, and enter. Alright, awesome. So now I have all of these numbers, but I can't do sort-n necessarily, because if I do that, it's going to give me all of this. I could cheat, and I could do this. I could cheat and just say sort. And there we go. There's the actual answer, okay? But if I had actually said 800 to 899, then we're in trouble, because if I scroll all the way up, I might not see what that number is. Yeah, see, I can't get in the 800s. So let's try to come up with a command that will actually be a lot more specific and give us the actual answer that we're looking for, no matter what the amount is. So we're not going to use sort. What can we do? Well, now what we can do is we can grep, because this is very specific, remember. So we're going to grep the 900. So let's do this. Grep 9, because we know it starts with a 9, and then we can say 0 to 9, 0 to 9, and then we can say star. Okay, well, that really didn't work, because look, we got this huge amount right here, so that's not what we're looking for. So let's do something else. Let's say this 0909, and then we're gonna say / dot. That worked. There's no 1000, it's all 900. Why did that work? Okay, so here's a cool trick. The cool trick is that if you use dot, remember dot is a regular expression, and dot usually means that there has to be something here, right? But if you use, sorry, it's backslash, I said /. If you use backslash dot, what that means is that dot is actually a dot. You're actually looking for this character. So now what's happening is you're seeing it has to start with a 9. The second number has to be anywhere from 0 to 9. The third number has to be anywhere from 0 to 9, and it has to have a period after. So it has to be between $900 and $999 with a period. I don't care what the cents are. And when you hit enter, like we showed you, it gives us all this. But we're not done, because now that we have all the right stuff, it's all out of whack. So now that's when you are going to want to do sort -n. And now we get that, which is amazing, right? That answers this question. Now you know this long line of code just to get that answer. But what about this guy? We need to know the 13th last amount. Okay, that's really not too bad. You can count. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But what's the code? What's the command? Well, this one's easy. Just say tail 13. You do that, and look, it's right up here. Now imagine it's like tail 1300, and you're like, oh my god, like it doesn't show me because it's so high up. How can we get it back down? Well, again, that's simple. Just pipe it over to to sort -nr. Now you brought it down. So that is how you answer that question. And if you want, you can do tail again. You can say tail 1. So there's so many ways that you can do it. It's just about really understanding each of these commands, understanding how they work, try to be as efficient as possible with them. It will really help you to understand regular expressions. But when it comes down to it, look how crazy long this file was just to get that answer. Or sorry, I say file, I meant command. Look how long this command was just to get that answer. It's pretty big. But when you think about the logic of it, it actually makes a lot of sense. You're going to grep the loan payments first, and based on all of those loan payments, now we're going to just cut out everything so that we just have the amounts of the loan payments. And then we're going to just look at any loan payment that has a $900 to $99 with a point. So it's got to be 3 digits long, starting with a 9, and it has a point after. We don't care what happens for cents. Then you're going to sort it numerically. Then you're going to say, just show me the last 13 lines. And then based on those lines, sort it in reverse and show me the last entry. Looks long, but if you can logically figure it out, it makes so much more sense, and it makes you very accurate when you're finding your answers. So that is how you do it. Again, I know that this stuff is complicated, but try to go over this yourself. Do the quiz questions that are on your e-learn that the teacher gave you. Do mine. Try to figure them out. Once you've seen this video, maybe sleep on it the next day. Try to figure it out on your own, and then ask yourself questions. I mean, look, if I go into that file, cat bank, like look how much is there. There's just so much information, and there's so many different codes. You can look for account numbers. You can say how many individual account numbers are there. And I'm just making this off the top of my head. So I'm like, okay, well, I know that the customer number is this guy right here. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the 4th field. So what I can do is just say, let's cut delimiter field 4 in this bank thing. So now I'm only going to get these customer numbers. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then I'm like, let's just sort it numerically, and let's say UNIQ, and then word count, and that will tell me how many different customers are in this file. And there you go. There's 47,446 customers in this file, and it didn't take me long to figure out the logic behind this. I just asked myself the question and then I answered it. Do that for yourself. I promise you, if you do that, this will end up being really, really easy for you on the test. Ask me if you have any questions. Even if you want to make up your own questions and you're like, I don't know if this is right, send me the question, send me the command that you used to get the answer, and I'll tell you if it's right. So hopefully this really helps you. I'm sorry it's so long, but I promised you that I would give you something that would go over this in as much detail as I could. I will see you all on Wednesday, and if I don't, then good luck on your exams. Take care, guys. Bye.